So, yeah, thank you for accepting this invitation. And
well, thank you for inviting me, and the honor of helping you launch this aspect of things. The technology is always intimidating until it becomes kind of second nature, but I'm very far from it becoming really second nature.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, the Jon Kabat-Zinn, of course, I don't need to do any introduction, So I think I met you first time in 2017, somewhere in May, I think, in Omega.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was 5 days mindfulness course in Omega Institute.
Yeah, that I was teaching with my son, Will.
Yeah, Will was there.
Yeah, and I told him that we were going to be doing this, and he said to say hello.
Right, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I heard you since very young, that your name. And yeah, I think, I thought you are very far, far away, So one time I saw that there is the 5 days mindfulness workshop in Omega. And I was very excited to meet you. I thought wow, I'm going to meet the legend, the legend of mindfulness, MBSR, because the whole world is talking about, and wherever I go, I did MBSR. And I thought who is that guy? Oh, the Jon Kabat-Zinn. So it was me a kind of, I would say really in my heart, that even in email, I really a kind of said a Bodhisattva, Jon Kabat-Zinn. And I really mean it. And I'm trying to.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I just wanted to go to see you in this, I think 2017, to feel your presence and learn from you. And because see, I grew up in a monastery since 5 years old. So I was recognized when I was 1 year old, and then for, let's say, 2 decades in a monastery in Shedra, and the whole, you have to complete this Kempo degree, and then the Vajra master. And we were not trained to how to really teach to the lay practitioner.
Yes.
And I've been kind of listening your videos in YouTube, and then I thought wow, I mean, what is that method that he can really heal the ordinary people? Because for us as Rinpoche, as soon as I open my mouth, we talk about high dharma,
right?
Very high, which is very far from their ordinary life. And we don't know how to even go to their ordinary life. And first of all, really not experienced. So yeah, that's just a kind of introduction. Let's say I met you the first time in Omega Institute, and yeah, I was touched. And for 5 days I was with you meditating, and you and Will was guiding your son, and yeah, I really felt I would say, great meditation master with a fully presence, and I really feel that blessing. And I saw, I think there were 200 people around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see in their eye, they were just melting day by day. I thought wow, I should learn this. And then, yeah, by the way, maybe I didn't tell you that later, I think 1 year or 2 years later, so I took 8 weeks mindfulness MBSR course online. Yeah. Oh. So it was, I think, it was a few years ago, I think around pandemic, I don't remember exactly now. So I took that course, and then it was really, really that combination of yoga and present of the moment, So it was really beautifully you designed. And yeah, I mean, I was in Tibet for 3 years, 6 months, wandering life. And we are come through this Mahamudra traditional,
yes, of course.
And your teaching of this mindfulness, it sounds like a simple in a surface, but in a deep, I really saw it was Mahamudra. What you are teaching is just Mahamudra, the Dzogchen.
Yeah.
But when people hear, it's just mindfulness, just mindful. But when I was listening carefully, there was this, as you are saying this. Don't judge the thoughts, whatever it arises, let it be as it is. And that's exactly how you connect to the true nature of mind,
Yeah.
So I feel like that's beautifully like the ancient teaching in a very simple language. So thank you for what you are doing. I mean, what you have
This
been
is
done.
music to my ears to hear you say that, because my intention from the beginning was always to make the Dharma, in its fullness, available to people who were suffering in a million different ways, but because of whatever the karmic conditions are, would never wind up in a monastery or a meditation center where they might learn the rudiments of meditative liberation or compassion or anything like that. And so MBSR was really designed as a kind of portal for people to move into the Dharma in ways that would be recognizing their true nature from the very beginning and pointing out the power of meditative awareness without creating sort of a cultural vocabulary that might make it very difficult for them to appreciate because it would seem so foreign, or that I was trying to teach them some other religion or anything like that. So the essence of it was to through my own experience, try to take the Dharma and make it available universally to people who are suffering and who have reached the end of their rope, as we say in English, with medical conditions that are not necessarily, going to improve because we don't have treatments for everything, but that the potential for healing is always present if you can find a way to come into deep connectivity with the true nature of one's experience, and get outside of the story of me and my suffering. So an attachment to I, me, and mine. And so MBSR is really designed as a curriculum to, just be another Dharma vehicle, so to speak, but without the cultural challenges that many of the traditional paths would present for regular, people, whether they're Americans or anywhere in the world. And when you showed up at our retreat, I was just so amazed because nobody in robes had ever shown up for an intensive mindfulness retreat that I was offering. And there you were sitting at the back, almost invisible, but in your robes. And it just felt like a certain kind of reconnecting of paths that were never separate to begin with, but that one has to have a long-term horizon and a lot of patience to hope that the little stone that one throws into the water, we could say MBSR is just a little stone, but it thrown in the water in 1979, and the ripples go out and out and out. And we publish research papers on our findings and so forth. And over time, it's come to the point where, as you were saying, you're hearing about it all over the world. And that's very gratifying to me. But the way I understand it is that it's really the power of the Dharma. It has nothing to do with me. It's just another way in which the Dharma stream is making itself available in the present moment to the magnitude of the suffering that we're facing all over the planet.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you. Did you notice that my appearance little changed?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, it's just very beautiful.
After the 1-year retreat in the Milarepa cave, so I didn't cut my hair. So I'm just wanted to now kind of let it grow.
Isn't that a tradition that when you're on retreat, you don't cut your hair, right?
Right, yeah.
So, and it's fantastic that you did a 1-year retreat in Milarepa's cave. I mean, I can't even imagine what the karmic resonances of something like that would be.
Right. Yeah.
So deep bow to you for that. I mean, it's like, it sounds romantic, but it can never be totally easy, of course. So,
Right, yeah.
but really wonderful that you did that.
Thank you. Can I ask you some very random question?
You can approach this any way you like, and I'll just try to respond as best I can.
Okay, yeah. So I hope you.
In fact, I like that better than some kind of scripted linear process.
Right. Yeah. First of all, what is compassion for you? How important the compassion?
Yeah.
And how to really what is the way to open that compassion potential? Let's say, mindfulness, or how did you?
Well, let me begin with MBSR in a certain way, because on the surface, it doesn't look like we emphasize self-compassion in MBSR because we're emphasizing mindfulness. Of course, I don't see any separation between mindfulness and compassion, as they say, classically speaking, two wings, but one bird, so you can't have compassion without mindfulness and have it be true compassion. You can't have true mindfulness without it being compassionate. But when it comes to non-duality, it really felt to me that it was important to establish a foundation of mindfulness or heartfulness in some sense from the very beginning, and a discipline around it for medical patients who are suffering with an infinite number of different medical diagnoses, often associated with pain of various kinds, and where they're looking for some kind of magical medical or otherwise solution to take the pain away. And when they don't find any solutions like that, then they come to MBSR. So they're basically up against the nature of reality, that the first noble truth, there is suffering.
Of course.
It's not necessarily bad. It's just that it's inescapable in a human incarnation, that you will have suffering of one kind or another. In the same way as sooner or later, the body will die, you will die. So we approach the meditation practice as if just stopping and dropping into the present moment in some kind of formal posture, whether it's lying down or sitting or standing on your head doing yoga or whatever it is, that we approach the taking of one's seat, so to speak, as really taking a stand in your life. And that we do that in the only moment we ever have, which is now, which is this one. So I've come to see that itself, and I talk this way now, as a radical act of love. Just to take one's seat is a radical act of not just love, but of sanity in a certain way, because most of the time what we're doing is running through our moments to get to better moments where there'll be less suffering. So we're trying to always escape from suffering and find happiness or health or whatever it is, but we don't know who's doing all the escaping. We don't know who's running. We don't know why we're going where we're going, and we're lost in thought. And we're caught up in emotional turmoil and storms of one kind or another. And that, of course, is a certain kind of prescription for disaster, for basically looking outside oneself, always for solutions to bring me to happiness, to bring me to peace, without ever any investigation of the me, and whether what I'm doing is wise or unwise. So when we take our seat in meditation formally, it's very helpful for beginners to be told right away that taking your seat is a radical act of sanity and of love, even if they don't understand it, but that when we drop into the present moment, we're actually dropping into our life in a very, very fundamental way. And the body being the first foundation of mindfulness in the classical Buddhist, texts, then we're going to focus on the body. And rather than self-compassion, becoming a theme or a conceptual domain that we bring to it, we just investigate it as if, with an open mind. We don't try to improve it or to feel differently about it. We just bring pure awareness to the body sitting. And now, of course, this is very, very difficult for most people to do, because after 1 second or two, they don't like it, or it's too much stillness, or the body hurts, or the mind gets agitated. So we give them instructions, of course, the fundamental mindfulness instructions, for not taking one's thoughts or emotions personally, but simply attending, dropping into awareness itself, which most people have never had awareness pointed out to them. That when we talk about awareness as a kind of superpower, because everybody already has it. It's not like you have to attain it. What we don't have is access to our awareness most of the time, because it's all obscured, clouded over by thoughts and emotions and our reactivity to what's going on in the body, especially if there's discomfort or pain. So when we take this kind of approach, and we don't call it self-compassion, we just let people experience it for what it is, it turns out that they experience compassion, and often without the narrative of self, because we do it in a room with sometimes 30 or 40 other people, 20, 30, 40 other medical patients. All of them have something that nobody wants to have. And everybody thinks my problem is the worst problem. But then they look around the room and say, well, I don't want to have what that person has. I don't want to have what that person has. So there's a certain degree of self-acceptance that maybe I can work with what I have. And how can I work with it? Well, I can embrace it in awareness. I can just hold it, because it's here anyway. If I push it away, if I pursue it, if I get caught up in thinking about it, I'm caught. But if I just hold it, I can discover, and people can do this in the first class, in the first hour, that I can have a new relationship with my old experience, with intense sensation in the body, or with my thoughts or emotions about the intense sensation, or about the story of me, the whole story of my whole life up to this point, and what a disaster it's become, or what a failure I am, or all of that stuff. And we say it's all okay. So this is kind of, in some sense, the embodiment of compassion. The invitation itself to take your seat is so much an invitation to accept oneself in the present moment as we are, that it is a radical act of love, but we don't talk about it so much. We just let people discover that for themselves, so that they don't have to now add something about, now I have to be compassionate with myself, but just attend, just pay attention and see what happens. And what happens is that naturally empathy and compassion arise, because you're in a room with 30 other people and you look and listen and hear what they're going through, and you realize, oh my God, I'm not alone. This is kind of the nature of humanity, that at a certain point, with aging, old age, sickness, and death, sooner or later, something's going to go on, whether it's with the body, with the mind, with the world, and that we can stop and inhabit a timeless quality of the present moment. And in this moment, we can already be okay, no matter what's wrong with us. We can discover that there's more right with us than wrong with us, no matter what's wrong with us. In part, and you can see it very quickly, because you're still breathing. That's a very good thing, because if you weren't breathing, you'd be dead. So no matter how much pain you're in this moment, can we bring awareness to the breath, say, in the body? Experience the pain as just what it is, in other words, sensation, or thoughts and emotions associated with these intense, difficult sensations. And then notice that your awareness is not in pain. The awareness is free in this moment when you recognize that you're not your pain, you're not your narrative about how much suffering is going on. You're the awareness itself. People get this fairly quickly. And then, of course, you exercise the muscle by having homework. You go home from the hospital. It's a 2.5-hour class. And then you practice once a day for about 45 minutes a day, these various guided meditations with audio so that you know what to do. And you do it, as we say, as if your life depended on it. We're not joking around. This is like, we're very, very serious about the discipline. And because we're serious about it, people take it more seriously and they actually practice. Maybe it's not 6 days a week, maybe it's 3 days a week, but whatever it is, it's more than they were doing before. And it's a door into the boundless spaciousness of awareness. Now, people don't have that kind of vocabulary and they don't need it, but they have an experience that I'm bigger than my narrative or who I think I am. And that's the kind of first step towards wakefulness and a first step towards liberation. So then kindness, loving kindness and compassion, as I was saying, don't become one more technique or one more guided meditation that you have to do. They arise naturally out of awareness and without ever hearing Dzogchen or Mahamudra vocabulary about awareness itself being compassionate, that the boundless spaciousness is compassion. They know that in a way that's not intellectual. And then, of course, you forget. So in the next moment, you've forgotten everything that you had experience with. So then, of course, the core meditation practice is notice where your mind is when you forget. And then you're already back because the noticing is pure awareness. So then you're here again. And so it's very compassionate. It's very forgiving because the guided instructions themselves are every time you notice anything, the noticing itself is the awareness. And so that transcends the pain, the suffering, the narratives about how bad my life is. And that's very, very liberating, right from the first moment.
Right, yeah.
So that's the kind of basic intention behind MBSR from the very beginning. And then, of course, it's 8 weeks long so that people can really get into the practice. And the whole point originally was that we thought it would be I thought it was a good idea if more Americans meditated and did meditative hatha yoga too, to help the body in a certain way. They were all different doors into the same room. The room is heartfulness or mindfulness or awareness or compassion, whatever vocabulary you want to use, but inhabiting it in such a way that you're not operationalizing a script that you've learned, but it's more pretending to be aware than to actually be aware, because you're trying to force yourself to be good at something instead of just being real. And, I mean, we've been doing this now for 43 years. And for the people who are still alive that began at the beginning, they're still meditating, many of them 40 years later. And that was the original goal, was that it wasn't 8 weeks and it would be a nice little relaxation technique or some kind of gimmick to help people feel better. It was like, no, this is a launching platform like a Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy, launching platform into a Dharma trajectory of wisdom and self-compassion for the rest of your life. And not just self-compassion, but compassion for really all beings, but for life itself and for the conundrums that the mind, when it doesn't know itself, the levels of suffering that it can generate, as we're seeing now in Ukraine, but also in many other places in the world, as well as with our problems with climate change, global warming, and what we're creating in terms of hell realms for future generations.
You are right that more people are present, and as you said, that with the awareness, so that itself is compassion, itself is that everything, it is just everything is there, no? When you are present in that awareness. So when you talk about awareness, like a pure awareness, you emphasize on the pure awareness. Is that the same that you are talking about the Buddha nature, like a nature of mind? Is it the same from your perspective?
It's meant to be. Now, of course, this is something scholars will debate forever.
Okay.
But I'm not that interested in the scholarship part. I'm interested in what is wise action in terms of suffering, liberation from suffering. So one doesn't have to understand, the niceties of and the sort of the subtleties, the endless subtleties of Buddhist psychology and philosophy. I mean, they're just profound. But it's better to have an experience of it and not even understand where it comes from.
Of course.
But the experience of it is what's most important. And then life, in some sense, becomes the Dharma teacher. And there's no one way to understand the Dharma. In my experience, every Dharma teacher, even within, say, one tradition, even within the sort of Nyingma tradition, or the Gelug tradition, or the early Buddhist tradition, with Bhikkhu Analayo, or the Zen tradition, the Chan tradition, everybody's teaching the same thing, more or less. They're teaching the Four Noble Truths, but everybody's teaching it differently. Even if you take the same text, the Heart Sutra or so forth, and you have different Rinpoches teaching the Heart Sutra, and different people will benefit depending on who's doing the teaching because of the karmic resonances. So I love that in some sense, there's no one right way to teach the Dharma. There have to be an infinite number of ways to teach the Dharma, in part because there are an infinite number of ways in which people suffer and an infinite number of ways in which karma expresses itself. So one size will not fit all.
Right.
And MBSR was never meant to be like special. What it was meant to do is, in some sense, show how special the M is, how special mindfulness is when it's understood as the heart, if you will, of Dharma, the heart, as they say, of Buddhist meditation. And that's not to say that it's the full extent of Buddhism or Buddhist meditation, except from a non-dual perspective, because as soon as you touch one element of the Dharma, is a very real way in which all elements are present. And then, yes, you can cultivate certain kinds of refinements of practice in different ways. And that's the beauty of studying with many different teachers, and even in many different traditions.